Hello, everyone, and welcome to our deep dive into what you might call the very fabric of reality. Today, we're talking about the code of existence. And let me tell you, this is one of those concepts that once it clicks, it really changes how you see everything: life, our purpose, and our whole relationship with the Creator. So glad you're here for part 3 of our Everlasting Gospel Study series. Now, if you're just jumping in, you've picked a great time. And for those of you who've been on this journey with us, welcome back. It's about to get even more interesting. You know, last time we peeled back the curtain on something truly profound, the covenant of peace between the Father and the Son. This was that eternal agreement, a mystery hidden for ages, that laid the groundwork for the entire plan of salvation. And it showed us that incredible self-sacrificing love that's right at the heart of the Godhead. And that love, well, that's the foundation for everything we're going to talk about today. Okay, so let's map out where we're going because we're building directly on that foundation of love. First, we're going to completely reframe how we think about law, calling it protocols for life. Then, we'll look at 2 very different kinds of law, one that's human and one that's divine. Once we've got that down, you'll see how it totally transforms our understanding of sin and its inbuilt consequences. And finally, we'll wrap it all up by discovering what it really means to live in harmony with our Creator. It all connects, so let's jump in. All right, let's get right into our first big idea: protocols for life. And I really mean that. If you can get your head around this concept, it might just change how you see everything, from the 10 Commandments all the way to the laws of physics. Let me start by asking you a question. Just be honest with yourself. When you hear that word law, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it probably brings up feelings of, well, maybe restriction or authority, or even the fear of getting caught. Yeah, we think of speed limits, legal documents, a list of don'ts, things put on us from the outside by some authority. Rules that if you break them, there's a penalty attached, a fine, some kind of punishment. And look, those are just human rules made to manage behavior. But what if that's a really limited, human-centric way of looking at it? What if there's a much deeper, more fundamental meaning of law that's actually woven into the fabric of the universe itself? And this right here is the absolute key for today. When we talk about God's laws, we're not talking about a list of arbitrary rules. We're talking about the code of existence. Think of it like the universe's source code, the built-in operational protocols for life to even exist and to flourish forever. They aren't rules for life. They are the very principles of life. You know, like the law of gravity. It isn't a rule you can break. It's a principle describing how reality works. Well, God's moral and physical laws are exactly the same. They just describe how life is designed to function at its best. And hey, this isn't some new idea. Just listen to what Proverbs says here. The law is a lamp, it's light. Now, a lamp doesn't trap you, does it? No, it lights up the path so you don't fall and break your neck in the dark. Light doesn't restrict you, it reveals what's real. The verse says that even corrections aren't just punishments, they are the way of life. The law is there to guide us into more life, not to keep us from it. Okay, that idea of law as a light, not a cage, leads us perfectly into our next section: 2 kinds of law. This is where we make the distinction crystal clear, the difference between a rule that's imposed and a principle that's just inherent. Look at this comparison. The difference is night and day. On one side, you've got man's law. It's arbitrary, right? We could decide the speed limit is 55 or 65. The consequences are external and imposed. If you speed, you don't just naturally crash. A police officer has to pull you over and give you a ticket. The consequences artificially tacked on to the action. But now look at God's law. It's inherent. It's built into the system. And the consequences are natural. For example, the law of health tells us that if your diet is junk, your health will eventually be junk. That's not a punishment. It's a natural result. Here's a perfect example of man's law, right from the book of Daniel. The king makes this decree based on his own pride. Now notice the punishment. Being thrown to the lions has absolutely zero natural connection to the act of praying. One doesn't cause the other. It's a completely external, arbitrary punishment, designed to enforce the king's will through sheer terror. Now contrast that with God's original instruction in the Garden of Eden. He doesn't say, if you eat from that tree, then I'm going to have to come down here and strike you dead. No. He says, in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. The death is presented as a direct, inevitable, natural result of the action itself. It's like saying, hey, if you jump off this cliff, you will surely fall. Or if you unplug this lamp from the wall, its light will surely go out. It's not a threat. It's a statement of reality, a warning about a built-in consequence. Okay, so if we've just redefined law as the operating system for life, then that has to radically change how we see sin, right? It's not just about ticking off a list of don'ts. Let's explore that in our third section, the nature of sin. So what is sin really? It is so much more than just breaking a rule. The Bible calls it lawlessness. And what that means is choosing to live as if there are no laws of life or trying to invent our own. It's the act of operating against the very protocols that make existence possible. At its core, it's choosing a state of being that is, by its very nature, separate from the Creator, who is the source of all life.
1 John 3:4 gives us that classic definition. Sin is a transgression of the law. But now we can see this with fresh eyes, can't we? It's not just about crossing some line someone drew in the sand. It's about stepping outside the entire system of life. It's trying to run software that's completely incompatible with your own operating system and the design of the entire universe. And this verse just brilliantly illustrates the end result of that choice. Pay close attention to the wording. He that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. You see, sin isn't primarily an offense against some distant, angry rule maker. It's an act of self-harm. You're violating the principles of your own being. It's like a fish deciding it hates the law of water and choosing to live on the beach. Is the fish being punished? No, it's destroying itself. And that's why the verse ends so bluntly. All they that hate me love death. When you choose to operate outside the laws of life, you are, in effect, choosing the only other alternative. This flows right into the consequence. I mean, if the law is a built-in principle of life, and sin is choosing to go against that principle, then the consequence has to be built-in and natural too. So let's look at this in section 4, the inbuilt consequence.
This image really says it all, doesn't it? On one side, you have vibrant life, a world flourishing because it's in harmony with its design, connected to its source. And on the other, you have disconnection, which leads inevitably to decay and death. The thing is, it's not that one side is being rewarded and the other is being punished. The state of each is the direct natural outcome of its connection or lack of connection to the source of all life. It's that simple. Paul explains this perfectly with the farming analogy of sowing and reaping. It's a fundamental principle of nature. If you plant corn seeds, you get corn. If you plant thistle seeds, you get thistles. The harvest is always determined by the seed. In the exact same way, if you live according to the principles of separation and self, what the Bible calls sowing to the flesh, the natural harvest is corruption or decay. But if you live connected to the source of life, sowing to the Spirit, the natural harvest is everlasting life.
Ellen White uses this other amazing metaphor, a fountain. As she says, God is the fountain of life. Just picture a flower trying to live after it's been cut from its roots and water source. It's not being punished, it's just experiencing the natural, inevitable result of being cut off from what sustains it. And she says that when we choose sin, we're the ones doing the separating. We are the ones who cut ourselves off from life.
So here's the bottom line, the crucial point. The final consequence for sin is not some act of arbitrary power by God. It's not a king deciding on a punishment. It's the inevitable natural result. Those who reject the principles of life are simply reaping the harvest of their choice. Mercy is this constant offer to be plugged back into the fountain. To reject that mercy is to choose to stay unplugged and to experience the natural result. They get exactly what they've sown.
And this brings us to our last section, and this is where we can just zoom all the way out and see the breathtaking beauty and scale of this design. Because this isn't just about us, it's about the entire cosmos. This is harmony with the Creator. I just love this quote from Ellen White because it puts it all in perspective. The very same principles of order, design, and harmony that keep planets spinning in their orbits and that hold tiny atoms together are the exact same principles that are designed to govern our lives. We're part of this grand cosmic design. And just like a planet can't just decide to have its own orbit without causing total chaos, we can't find our true purpose or function outside of living in harmony with our Creator. So at the end of the day, to transgress His law, to step outside these protocols for life, is so much bigger than just breaking a rule. It's choosing to put yourself out of sync with the entire universe. It's choosing to be a note of discord in a symphony that was written for perfect harmony. It is to introduce a frequency of anarchy and ultimately ruin into a system designed for life. And that leaves us with a massive hanging question, doesn't it? If the system is so perfectly designed for life, if the laws are inherent and self-sustaining, and if harmony is the default state of the entire universe, then how on earth did discord ever get started? Where did that first note of anarchy even come from? Well, that very question is the subject of our next explainer. I really hope you'll continue this incredible journey with us in part 4, where we're going to see how it all began. The great controversy starts, and not on Earth, like you might think, but in the one place you would never expect it, in heaven itself, in the very presence of God. We'll see you then.